It seems there's a lot to be scared of these days. And I have to admit that one of the things that freaks me out the most is all the fake news, the conspiracy theories, and lies that dominate our country right now. It feels like reality and truth itself is under assault every day. It takes many disturbing forms, of course, things like the denial of climate change, that masks are actually dangerous to your health, or the belief that New York City is actually in chaos, enough to name it, as the Justice Department did this week, the anarchist jurisdiction. But even falsehoods like this don't get to the heart of the anxiety that I'm feeling, because at least I feel like I can understand these. I know that powerful special interest groups are using their wealth to deny global warming. I know that the president is using the pandemic for political game and racism to typecast urban areas. These lies are, of course, hugely problematic. But what really keeps me up at night are the lies that seem to almost make no sense at all. They don't seem to have any interest in truth or reality. They are so far on the fringes that I don't even know how to understand them. Like QAnon, a global conspiracy theory which, according to the New York Times, alleges, of course falsely, that the world is run by a cabal of Satan-worshippers who are plotting against the president while operating a global sex child trafficking ring. It sounds crazy. And it is crazy, and you couldn't think that that would be made up, except that somebody did, and a lot of people believe it. According to some studies, somewhere between 6% and 1/2 of the Republican Party believes that there is a global cabal of people undermining the president. Now, for some of us here, that might seem rich coming from a religious community, a minister, because, of course, religion has peddled all sorts of lies and untruths over the years. Religion invents its own reality in opposition to the reality of the world, often. And we see this in the opposition to science and evolution. We see it in the stories told about who matters based on ancient and arbitrary interpretations of Scripture. Now, the kind of religion we believe here as Unitarian Universalists is not that kind of religion. Our religion is a religion of the world. It doesn't mean we can't or don't believe in God or spirituality or beautiful myths that describe things that aren't in our everyday lives. But we do not deny the reality in front of us. Our fourth principle is clear on this. We are called into the free and responsible search for truth. Our tradition was born from denying irrational doctrines that defied common sense. It was born of the skepticism of those who claim to know truth so confidently, and yet never forgetting to hold truth tight, to the idea that truth is real and worth pursuing. That's what Unitarian Universalists believe. The scary thing about the world we live in now is that a huge part of our country, it seems, no longer cares about this pursuit, no longer cares about what is real or true. A society divorced from this reality, from any reality that is real, does not prosper. It is not bound by common sense or by tradition or norms of behavior, and nothing is sacred or safe. We see that power undermines truth so that the powerful can remake it for their own purposes. I'm reminded of the chilling quote from 1984, the Orwellian story by George Orwell. Quote, "The party told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears. It was their final, most essential command." If we can't trust our own eyes and ears, what is truth? What is scary about beliefs like QAnon is that they fundamentally aren't interested in truth at all. They aren't digging for actual evidence or critically examining the premise of their belief, nor would they trust a source or theory that disproved their belief. They are not concerned, as many of these conspiracy theories are not concerned about reality, but about the feelings that they manufacture in the people who believe them. So we have to ask, why are we seeing this growth of conspiracy theories and fake news now. We can start by acknowledging first that none of this is entirely new. People believed absurd things long before today. They believed in a tree that grew lambs throughout most of the Middle Ages. I encourage you to look that up, the vegetable lamb of Tartary. They believed that King George was trying to enslave white colonists during the Revolution, and they believed that cigarettes didn't cause cancer. Now, nor has it always been unreasonable to believe in conspiracies. We think of conspiracies as irrational, but that hasn't always been true, especially if you lived on the margins. If you believed, for example, that the FBI was systematically threatening civil rights leaders in the 60s, or that the CIA was overthrowing foreign governments, or the government was deliberately infecting black people with disease, you would have in your day been called a conspiracy theorist. But you would have also been right. But this moment is unique, and it is uniquely troubling, despite all the history of fake news, all the history of conspiracy theories. And in my readings about why this was, there are several reasons that I discovered, three major ones, for why this moment is particularly bad. First, historians believe that fake news and conspiracy theories prosper in times of social unrest, social uncertainty, and transition. We've seen this most in the United States over the past few decades, where working-class white Americans have seen their social prospects worsen and dwindle, and their power relative to the rest of the country diminish. When people feel they can't control or understand their world, when they are afraid and feel insecure, they turn to ideas that seem to explain away what is happening and give them a sense of control. Conspiracy theories offer this, as well as a sense of uniqueness. That person, despite their circumstance, diminished and unhappy with it as they are, that they know something special. They are in on an important secret. Now, this insecurity, when paired with resentment and a feeling of victimization, is dangerous. We see that all over the country. It leads to fantastical beliefs like QAnon, which draws lines of good and evil. Because how could you not if you believe that stuff? It leads to supporting anyone who shares that belief or is willing to encourage it, and a contempt for anyone who opposes them. It possesses a righteous anger unquestioned by logic. This is especially troubling because the second reason this is happening and why this is burgeoning is because the rise in conspiracy theories today has coincided with another rise: the broader acceptance and resurgence of white supremacist groups. Two worlds share a great deal in common: a suspicion of established institutions, a disdain for political correctness and being told what is right and wrong, and regressive views that blame societal problems on some other. Whether that's a global Jewish conspiracy or Black Lives Matter organizing as Soros-paid actors. And this skepticism extends to women as well. Alex Jones, one of the most prolific conspiracy theorists behind InfoWars, has denounced feminism as a globalist plot to undermine men everywhere. As disturbing as all of this is, it is made worse by one final thing: that in the past few years, people who believe these conspiracies and these falsehoods now have access to the highest level of power. All the way up to our president, who invents and encourages and retweets conspiracy theories that have basis in no fact. That's scary. A staunch QAnon supporter will for the first time be elected in November to Congress. It is rising into power, this nonsense. People who believe and support these ideas control our government. Our country is run by people who do not care or believe in the value of reality. Now, I don't see this ending anytime soon, and if we think this is going to be an easy fix in November, we should think again, because these problems will still be here. People will still be resentful and angry about the changes our society is facing. People will still not trust the mainstream media, and alternative facts will be widespread. People will still blame people of color and women for their problems. Fake news literally spreads around the internet faster than real news, by multiples of times. And foreign governments are continuing to sow discord on social media, and none of that is likely to change. So in this meantime, we are left living in this world together, you and me and all of those people out there who believe that truth is real, that where we get our sources from matter, that we should have an objective reality at which decisions in our communities and government are made. The problem is that this is a hard world to live in. It's a world that bombards us and exhausts us with nonsense and falsehoods. On a psychological and emotional level, this is an assault, and it takes its toll. I know I feel it, I bet you do too. It takes an enormous amount of energy to maintain our sense of self and our sense of truth, to keep the walls of our perspective strong. I sometimes feel like a cell being attacked by a virus, or like a soldier defending a castle under siege. I have my shield up, protecting me from the arrows of lies and nonsense being sent at me from the news every single day that are being spouted. And this is part of what has been so difficult about these past few years, constantly having to defend ourselves, our minds and hearts, from an almost nihilism, where everything we hold dear, even our fundamental belief in truth, is under attack. From people and ideas that are so far removed, so far down the rabbit hole, we can't even begin to understand what they are thinking and why. We can't dismiss that toll that takes on us. Because if we're going to keep this work going, we're going to have to find ways of being resilient, to keep the walls strong, keep the castle up. It has similarities to those in abusive relationships being gaslit. It's similar to an abusive partner dedicated to forcing their reality onto you while systematically destroying your sense of self and your will to resist. Only none of us can leave this relationship because we're stuck with it until power changes. The danger of this constant assault on truth is not that we start to believe the lies, although that is in some way a danger, but it is that we stop resisting it, that we accept that we live in a world governed by falsehoods and that truth becomes unimportant, or at least a lost cause. I can feel that pull sometimes when I feel exhausted and overwhelmed by yet another lie, so confidently pushed by someone in power and so happily and uncritically consumed. But we cannot give in, because these are not abstract battles. The stakes are too high. The battle between truth and falsehood will determine how our planet survives climate change, whether thousands more will die of coronavirus, and whether the concerns and livelihood of those on the margins are ignored or denied. Now, we're not the only ones wrestling with this. Political scientists have tried to put together solutions that might solve this epidemic of misinformation. They suggest a few things like stronger investments in non-biased institutions, a deepened social commitment to common sense, courts of scientists to inform and counter non-reality-based legislation, stricter regulation of intentionally deceptive media. Now, I believe all these things can help, but none of them, unfortunately, can be implemented in the near future because those that are now making the rules are those who believe and benefit from the conspiracies and alternative facts. This is why voting and leadership really matters, and why this election coming up is so important. If you haven't phone banked yet, if you haven't sent postcards and signed up to do something about it, it's not just about an election, it's about supporting facts and reality. Which is why we must never acclimate to disinformation in the careless ways that people believe and share it. Why we must never stop calling people out on their falsehoods and asking people, demanding that they think critically about where they get their sources and their information. If we do this long enough, our hope is that hearts and minds will start to change. I wish I knew if truth will win out in the end. I don't know, because it's not a fair fight. But I do know that truth is worth fighting for. I know that if we can't protect reality, we can't protect anything else we care about. And we must not let that happen. There is too much at stake. We must keep the walls of truth strong. We must continue to insist that reality cannot be so easily swept away. That is the American way. It is the Unitarian Universalist way. And it must be our way now and here. May it be so, and amen.